Hello, welcome to Screen Talk with yours truly, Nomfanelo. So, Oscars just finished a few days ago, which marked the end of this award season on the film side. So I want to describe takeaways for me that stood out throughout this award season on the film side. So I'm not going to be on camera, but I did make this lovely presentation. So let's get started. So the first point is that one battle after another was always going to be the front runner. Because it seemed clear, like once it swept the critics prizes and the industry guilds, it was going to win the Oscar for best picture. So yeah, because it won critics choice, it won Golden Globe, it won at BAFTA, and then it won at the Oscars. Now there were other competition, of course, because you had Hamnet, which won the Golden Globe drama, and Sinners that won the SAG Ensemble Prize there. But it was always going to be one battle this whole time in regards to that race. Also, too, Sinners made history for a lot of reasons. I think, yeah, for this movie to be like a blockbuster, in a way, that's an achievement because it made a lot of money at the time. It did at the box office. It did well in terms of reception from both the critics and the audiences, and as a horror film, it did great too. And especially too, this award season was quite impressive. I never imagined that it would have been a part of this award season conversation, but hey, it managed to pull that off. And it received 16 Oscar nominations, which is, I believe, is the most of the film that has received in the history of the Oscars. And then managed to win four of those, which included original screenplay for Ryan Coogler, original score for Ludwig Göransson, cinematography for Autumn Arkapaw, which I believe she's the first woman to win this award. And then, of course, Michael B. Jordan won Best Actor for the movie, which I will get into that in a bit. But yeah, congrats to Sinners on doing that because yeah, it was quite historic, I guess, in a way for this movie to did what it did during awards season. And in regards to the best actress race, Jessie Buckley was always going to win. It seemed like this whole time. Even though there was some competition, but it seemed clear that she was going to take it because she won at Critics' Choice. She won Golden Globe, she won BAFTA, SAG, and then the Oscar. But he also had Rose Byrne. She won the Golden Globe for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, and she did very well with some critics groups. But nope, it was always going to be Jessie Buckley this whole time, and congrats to her. And I believe she's the first Irish woman to win the Oscar, which is great. And not too long ago, we had Cillian Murphy. He was the first Irish man to win the Oscar for Oppenheimer. So that's great. And then the supporting races were a bit up in the air, but as time went on, it seemed clear who was going to win. In regards to supporting actor, yeah, Jacob Lordy that won Critics' Choice. Stellan Skarsgård won Golden Globe. But then Sean Penn won at BAFTA, and then won at SAG, and then eventually won the Oscar. And he did not show up to any of those. But I did see an article that noted that he was in Ukraine when the Oscars were happening. In the case of supporting actress, Amy Madigan won a Critics' Choice, but then she lost a Golden Globe to Tiana Taylor. She wasn't nominated BAFTA, which went to Wunmi Mosaku for Sinners, but then she won at SAG, and then she won the Oscar. So that showed that, yeah, with both her and Sean Penn, the wins weren't guaranteed at first, but then eventually they prevailed. And I guess in a way for Amy Madigan, it's a bigger accomplishment because she was the only nominee for her film Weapons, and Typically, with low nominees in regards to the acting categories, it's a bit of a tough a battle, but at the end, she prevailed. So good for her. Now, the best actor race. This was the most interesting race, in my opinion, because you just did not know what was going to happen there, which makes it more exciting and easy to, and not easy, but exciting to see what was going to happen. Because we had Timothy Chalamet. He won Critics' Choice and Golden Globe. Wagner Moura won a Golden Globe. You had Robert Aramayo, who was not nominated for the Oscar. He won at BAFTA. And then Michael B. Jordan won at SAG and eventually won the Oscar. So there is that. And I have seen some conversations in regards to Michael B. Jordan's Oscar win. Now, if you had asked me if he was going to win the Oscar for Sinners, I'll be like, no way. But then, with how things played out, it eventually worked out for him at the end. So, but hey, congrats to Mike Wood Jordan for winning the Oscar. Because I thought he did a good job in the movie. But yeah, I would never have imagined he'd won for this movie, but hey, it shows things can happen. And apparently, Kyle Buchanan, he wrote an article for New York Times. Apparently, he talked to some people, and a person, an insider, told him that apparently, with his win, is what the industry wants and is good for the industry. Now, that could be interpreted into many different ways. Maybe it could be because, he is a movie star and they want to see a movie star winning, even though the other nominees are movie stars in their own rights. But again, like I said, that could be interpreted into many different ways. I'll leave it up for you to decide. But yeah, there's a lot of discourse in regards to his win. There's some people that felt, yeah, it was deserved. Others, not so much. Now, from what I read with some of the anonymous ballots, the people that voted for him noted that they enjoyed his performance, but then also too, because they enjoyed the film, they just voted for the film in whatever category it was nominated for. So there is that. But I've seen some people suggest that because of what happened at BAFTA, where, if you remember, he was presenting an award of Delroy Lindo when John Davidson, who had Tourette's syndrome, said the N word. And then that created a whole conversation, and there's been backlash to the conversations and all that stuff. I'm sure there are videos that have covered this that you could find. Um, in my opinion, it could have been preventable had they properly accommodated John Davison, but that didn't happen. And there could be a multitude of reasons why it happened the way it did, but I won't get into those because it'll go into conspiracy theory type conversations. But yeah, I'll leave it up for you to decide on that. But but yeah, I would like to say his win is based off merit, but again, I'll leave it up for you to decide. Now, I want to talk about the other nominees in this category. My opinion, Leonardo DiCaprio and Ethan Hawke were not going to win just because they didn't win any of the major precursors. Even though they were nominated in the other ones, I just didn't think they were going to happen. I've seen many people try to suggest Leonardo DiCaprio because of One Battle being the strong film and all that stuff, but just he was never really in play. And with Ethan Hawke, I just think with his film not being nominated for Best Picture, and there's also a visibility issue with his film, I just did not see it happening for any of them. With the case of Wagner Moura, the Golden Globe win, of course, was historic and all that stuff, and he was nominated Critics' Choice. But I think because he was snubbed at BAFTA and at SAG, that hurted his chances. Even though I've said before that there are people that have won the Oscar without being nominated for BAFTA and SAG. But it seems like these days that's harder to pull off. And then you have to add to, because his is a foreign performance, and usually the foreign performances that either win or nominated, they tend to have an industry prize or an industry nomination. He did not had neither of those, which limited his chance. Even though he was my preferred pick to win, it just did not happen. But hey, he did a great campaign, because I saw he appeared in a lot of events there, and there's that. But I guess the nomination is the win itself. Now, as for the case with Timothy Chalamet, I just do not think that was going to happen at all. Just given, because with the character in the movie is very unlikable and divisive. I think the movie itself is divisive, and there's also other factors too outside of the movie, which I'll get into. But it seemed like a lot of people were pushing him to win ever since Adrian Brody won the Oscar last year. You could argue before, when Timmy did the SAG speech, that was quite divisive in my opinion, because some people either liked it or they hated it. So there is that. But it seemed like with some of the ballots, anonymous ballots that I saw, there were some people that weren't going to vote for him because, um, yeah, either didn't like the movie or just did not like Chalamet personally. I think mainly because of the campaign. Um, but then some voters, if you look at some of these reports, say that allegedly Timmy is arrogant behind the scenes and apparently didn't show up to a lot of these industry events. But then if he did, when he did show up, he was late or act quite dismissive and all that stuff. But I guess that's a nutshell in terms of why he was not going to win. Now, I see many people say because of his comments with the ballet and opera, which I did the video on this. I don't think it's those comments, but you can argue that the interview itself, I believe, came out late February. I think while voting was happening or before voting, I can't remember. And you could argue that some people saw the interview and probably complained about that stuff, but it did not make a lot of noise. But then once voting was closing or was about to, is when it became viral. And, that's when, the rest is history, I suppose, in terms of the reactions to this. But there is that, which leads to the controversy surrounding Marty Supreme. I just think did not help this movie at all. If you remember, yeah, the press tour in terms of how he was campaigning this, and then also too with the whole awards thing. I just think, yeah, it was very over the top. It did more harm than good. I think the way he advertised it, you could argue it's good in terms of selling tickets, but when it comes to campaign for the Oscar, that's a no. And I think the way that he campaigned it is a big no. And I did video where I talked about the whole press tour of it all. If you want to check that out. And also, too, if you remember, there was the whole Page Six article where apparently this was when the Safdie brothers were doing Good Time, with one of the actors apparently assaulted an underage actress while doing a scene, and with both the Safdie brothers did not do anything essentially, because apparently Josh Safdie, did not stop it and all that stuff. I'll leave a link to the article in the description. But apparently, also to, and I learned about this, that apparently the story was like resurfaced, because apparently this was originally reported back in 2023 by the same writer, but for a different outlet, which is interesting. And I saw once this whole thing came out, there were articles that alleged that, oh, there's a smear campaign happening against Marty Supreme. I mean, we won't know like for sure, because there are rumors at this point. But I would say that like when this stuff came out, It didn't help that Josh Safdie kept quiet over this because he could have said something in regards to clarifying, what happened or to debunk it in some way, whichever way he wanted to go with. But the fact that he kept quiet over this for me is a red flag and shows that he's trying to hide from it. And apparently, when this story originally came out, he did not say anything either, which is a shame. Shame, shame, shame. And then also, too, apparently this movie is loosely based on Marty Reisman. And the family of Marty Reisman are not happy because of how the character is portrayed in the movie, even though it's a very loose adaptation. I believe Josh Safdie has said in interviews, many interviews, that the movie is original, but yet he used the autobiography from Marty Reisman to work on this movie, which is weird. But yeah, the family of Marty Reisman are not happy about this movie at all, and in terms of portrayal, but also too not crediting the book in the movie, whether it's a direct adaptation or just inspiration. So yeah, they did interview with Daily Mail where they talked about this. Many people think, oh, they're just talking about it now as part of the smear campaign, whatever. But when you look back, I found a Reddit post. This was back in August last year. Apparently, they have been angry for quite some time. So, according to this person who's apparently close with the family, saying, yeah, they're not happy how they were not contacted essentially over this movie. Um, but yeah, there's that. And I've not heard much since this whole story came out. So who knows what's going to happen, whether there's going to be legal action or just nothing. We'll have to wait and see. And the Actor Awards, or formerly SAG, they match 4 for 4 with the acting wins at the Oscars over BAFTA, which is improvement because for the past few years, it's either been 3 out of the 4, or 2 out of the 4, or at times 1 out of the 4. But this time they matched 4 for 4, which is an improvement. While BAFTA, I believe, was 2 out of the 4. So there's that. And then we have to talk about international movies. Well, even though it was a great year for international movies being recognized, there's still the glass ceiling for it to overcome. Because it seemed like, um, how can I say this? Sentimental Value seemed to be like the industry pick because it won more industry prizes in comparison to the rest. Um, with Secret Agent was more of the critics and festival picks because that won a lot of prizes there, which is an accomplishment itself. But it seemed like it was going to be Sentimental Value this whole time because it won I think it was like the jury prize. I can't remember, like the second place prize at Cannes when it debuted. Secret Agent also debuted at Cannes. That won the most prizes there. Um, it was just an accident that won like the Grand Prix. And I saw a lot of people, especially the puns, who were trying to push this movie. But it seemed like as time went on, it was not going to happen. I think because it's a very minimalist movie. Now, there's nothing wrong with making minimalist movies, but I just think with that style, it's not going to appeal to everyone and all that stuff. And yeah, I think with the voice of Hind Rajab, I have not seen this movie, but apparently it got standing ovation at Venice. I think it won some prizes there, if I'm not mistaken. But it seemed like that movie was just not going to materialize in terms of being like a huge competitor. Um, I'll talk about No Other Choice later. But I think Sarat was a bit of a late contender, even though it premiered at Cannes and all that stuff. But there is that. And there have been conversations in regards to the treatment of international films. Um, I've seen some people suggest that, like with value, why that was chosen is because it's more accessible or universal, whichever word you want to put it, and it dealt with filmmaking, but also to theater because Renata Ronso's character is in theater. And I think, yeah, because of those factors is why the movie was chosen over the others, which dealt with politics. I've not seen Surat, so I can't comment on Surat, and all that stuff. So maybe there could be that, or some, like this tweet mentions that because they have a Hollywood actor with sentiment value with Elle Fanning, it could be why. I don't know, but I'll leave it up for you to decide there. And I did see article, the New Yorker. They mentioned here, they say with it was just an accident in Secret Agent not winning anything at the Oscars is a reminder of the Academy's cultural myopia. If you're not familiar, cultural myopia or cultural blindness is a narrow, short sighted, and often arrogant tendency to judge the world exclusively through the lens of one's own culture. It involves assuming one's own values and practices are the standard or normal way, leading to a strict understanding of other diverse perspectives. And a quote from the article mentions, for all of its efforts to diversify and internalize its voting membership, the organization seems largely oblivious to the finest, most vital work being done by filmmakers outside of America. And this made me think, because if you remember last year, it seemed like the industry was trying to push Emilia Perez. I've talked about Emilia Perez before on the channel. You know my thoughts on that, but check out the videos if you haven't done so already. But it seemed like there was a hard push for that movie, but that movie just got more divisive, and of course the controversies did not help. It seemed like, I don't know, that maybe like had the controversies not happened, Emilia Perez would have most likely won that, which is unfortunate if that is true. But we will never know for sure. Maybe there's anonymous ballots out there from last year you could check to see how voters were, reacting to this at the time. But there's that. And from the post with the article that talks about this, a person linked their old Variety article that talked about similar subject matter. And there was a quote there that stood out to me where they said, and there is an Oscars lesson proven year after year. He might win with a dark vision, but in general, keep it light and keep it in English. I mean, yeah, that stands out. And I really hope that with international films just get more recognition. I did do video where I talked about how essentially they were snubbed by a lot of the guilds. Essentially, that created a whole conversation with that whole thing. But I just, yeah, like I think international films need to get more like recognition outside of the critics groups. But it seemed like we're a long ways to go on that front. But then leads me up to the Neon Five. So you remember how people were pushing the Neon Five, how that's going to break through with this awards season. But then at some point, Neon 5 became a Neon 4, where No Other Choice was out of the running, which I'll get into in a bit. And then at some point, it became Neon 2, with only Sentimental Value and Secret Agent getting nominations outside of international feature film and being in Best Picture. It was just an accident. Also got nominated for original screenplay, while Sarat got the sound category. But yeah, I just think with the whole international conversation that I just mentioned, it seemed like with international films, we're just gonna get a hard time. And even though like there are attempts to diversify, it seemed like we're still a long ways to go. And if you're looking at it now, it seemed like Golden Globes was practically the only one that awarded um, a lot of the wins with these films. Because like at the Oscars, Sentimental Value only won international feature film, which yeah, that's nice, but that's a bit of a letdown giving its number of nominations and stuff. While the others didn't even get anything at all at the Oscars, which is a letdown. But you could argue, competition, but or like some of the movies have their own individual reasons why they didn't win, so there is that as well too. Yeah, so with the Neon Five, four out of the five they premiered at Cannes, and they have won one or more prizes there. While No Other Choice premiered at Venice, I don't think it won anything there, but yeah, like I liked how with when these films premiered at Cannes, it kind of like, you know, prop them in the conversation to, hey, like, you know, we want to be taken seriously in terms of being like a huge competitor. And I believe Neon acquired all of these films. I think Sentimental Value was always under Neon, but I think the rest were acquired by Neon at Cannes, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, nice moment. I think it shows that, yeah, like try, especially for international film, premiere your film as early as possible at Cannes, and hope for the best there. But in the case with No Other Choice, I did video where I talked about this. I think with Park Chan Wook being banned from WJ, whether that's warranted or not, that for me was a huge reason for why this movie was snubbed at the Oscars. Um, it did more harm than good, and I think with him just not um, just accepting the fate essentially with the result of WGA did not help at all. But I want to say it's funny that after the Oscar nominations, Neon they did the billboard. It's a bit cheeky there. It was quite hilarious there, but yeah, it just seemed inevitable. It was not going to get nominated, in my opinion. I think mainly because of WGA. You could argue because of competition, but I think mainly because of the WGA expulsion. And award shows. There's a lot of issues with award shows. I've seen some people say there's identity crisis with these award shows where they're trying to do stuff that's trying to be viral, but you kind of lose the purpose of the award show at the same time. And we've seen, yeah, like Golden Globes are trying to, they did the whole poly market thing live, which I was not a fan of. Many people were not fans of, where they actually showed it live during the telecast, but also to apparently the people in the room saw that, which is a bit upsetting, I imagine. And yeah, and a lot of these shows they try to do comedy bits that don't land, or a lot of scissor reels for stuff instead. But yeah, we kept seeing a lot of speeches got cut short, or with some categories not shown at all, which is disrespectful. Because I noted one time, yeah, like with Critics' Choice, what happened when the team behind Secret Agent, they were awarded the prize at the red carpet, which they didn't even know. That was upsetting. Whole conversations on that, and an example also too, when original score was going to be cut from telecast. A lot of people were not happy with that, including people within the music community. They were like, no, 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 no. And then recently we saw, like, with the Oscars, when the team behind K-pop Demon Hunters, they won the Oscar for the Golden Song. They were cut, and they couldn't even finish their speech. Terrible. And lastly, politics. To speak or not to speak about politics, because yeah, given what's happening in the world, there's people out there that are choosing to speak out. Others they choose not to speak for whatever reason. I did a post where I talked about the whole thing with the Berlinale Festival, or the Berlin Film Festival. That whole thing. That was wild to cover there. So I'm not going to repeat the same talking points there, but I'll leave my post if you want to take a look at it. But yeah, some nominees they chose to speak out. Like with the team behind Secret Agent, they were very vocal in regards to what's happening with Brazil and all that stuff. I talked about when I talked about the movie, where they were given a hard time under a different administration and all that stuff. But then also too with BAFTA, because he had one controversy with the whole thing with the Tourette's syndrome, but then he had another when the filmmaker behind My Father's Shadow, where he said "Free Palestine," but then that was cut from the telecast, and that created a whole thing. So there is that. And then also, yeah, I think that's all that I had to say with this. Oh, forgot. Paul Thomas Anderson. So, with one battle after another, a lot of people like this movie, but then you have people that hate this movie. And that movie dealt with politics. While politics is uncertain, because many people say that its politics were shallow. I've seen some people try to say, "Oh, like the politics are clear and all that stuff," but anyways, he's been asked about the politics of the movie, and essentially, he has said in a nutshell that he wants to work to speak for itself. He says, "I'm not a politician," like he said at one point at BAFTA and Oscars. Apparently, he playfully tells the reporter, "I thought we were supposed to be partying." Terrible. And I've been seeing he's getting a lot of flack about that online, which I am not surprised. And this is worth noting. If you're going to deal with a certain subject matter, like politics, whatever, be prepared to address it when it comes to interviews and all that stuff. Because if you're not afraid to talk about that stuff, just don't make a movie or project on that. So, but I seen some people try to defend him, saying that, oh, like he doesn't have to talk about the politics. I mean, he doesn't have to talk about his own politics. I mean, that's his choice, but you should talk about the politics of the movie, because maybe some people are confused, need clarification on what he's trying to communicate and all that stuff. And there's been some criticisms like on that in the movie and with how like the French 75 were portrayed and all that stuff. So there is that. So that's pretty much it, what I had to share with my takeaways from this season. So I want to know your thoughts on all this stuff. Let me know in the comments section. If you want to support me, visit buymeacoffee.com/Malloy, where you could donate and also to look at exclusive posts there. Um, I have community tab on YouTube, so feel free to leave comments there as long as it's under community guidelines. And if you want to follow me, I have my link tree, as you can see on the screen, but also too, I have my links are in the description. So I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.